experience
Okay,
at
you
this
paid
level,
your people,
but
you pulled your
unbelievable.
business through the pandemic, and now doing the tough thing could.
Are you spiritual? Like, do you believe in God, or are you?
I'm not a Christian. I don't belong to any of the mainstream religions. I don't, and I haven't for a very long time. But I think that life is an enormous mystery, and that fundamentally, for want of a better word, it is a spiritual mystery. We're on a spiritual journey here. I think that the mainstream religions have narrowed that journey down into dogma and into creeds, where in most of the mainstream religions, most of the time, whether we're talking about Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, the Abrahamic faiths, the monotheistic religions, people. There are exceptions, but a lot of people are not having any direct contact with spirit. They're being taught what to think. They're being told what to think by basically a bureaucrat who happens to be a priest or a rabbi or a mullah who's saying, these are the teachings, you must adhere to these teachings. And actually, if you don't adhere to them, we're going to censor you and censor you in some way or another. To me, that's no more spiritual than doing business out on the stock exchange. You know, it's just it's an expert telling me what to think, whereas a spiritual experience is direct contact with the quote-unquote divine, which is not necessarily
but I can do this.
some old bad-tempered guy sitting up on a cloud. Far from it, as a matter of fact. That is not, in my view, that is a misrepresentation of what spirituality is.
That was really dumb.
We could get into all kinds of controversial areas here.
I mean, I still think I'm in very good shape.
With a higher power through your experiences?
Yes, on psychedelics, I've particularly on ayahuasca, I have felt the presence of the entity that I call Mother Ayahuasca.
And felt the mother.
I felt the mother, and I felt her teachings, and I felt grateful.
What was that like?
In the most compelling case, she took the form of an enormous serpent who wrapped herself around my body.
Serpents always coming back to
They're always coming back. And Mother Ayahuasca often takes the form of a serpent, sometimes takes the form of a jaguar, sometimes takes, not the motor car, and sometimes takes the form of
this under attack.
Was there any fear?
The message was no, I didn't feel fear. I felt enormously.
Was wrapping around.
No, I felt
this
enormously
queen is under attack
and
too.
again,
This
I got the message that I've had many times is that you won't be good at giving love to others if you don't love yourself. If you're constantly hating yourself, and I've gone through long periods of myself.
Okay, that is an interesting move. Actually, that defends both. Defends there.
So that that was a positive experience for me. I would say every experience I've had with ayahuasca has been positive, even the most challenging ones.
Yeah, what was the toughest?
The toughest experience I hesitate to share this in ayahuasca group, when you're drinking with, say, a dozen other people, there becomes an element of telepathy or communication that can take place. And it happened that I was in one group where it turned out later, we got the facts later, that was one individual who shouldn't have been
draw me here.
In ayahuasca, there's a tendency for you to lower your barriers. Your heart opens. You're very vulnerable to other people. And unfortunately, and this is a phenomenon that I would warn anybody of who's drinking ayahuasca in the West today.
He doesn't.
Or anywhere, as a matter of fact.
Okay, good.
Is that there are people who are using that
vulnerability
to gain psychic advantage over you. And it was the feeling, first of all, it happened to my wife, Santa, who was beside me, and then it happened to me, of an individual trying to enter our heads and take control of us. And we learned more about him the following day, and it turned out he'd been there the year before and had done exactly the same thing. We didn't know that at the time. He seemed to have developed some sort of psychic power. And when we questioned him about it, he said, I'm this basement shaman. I go around ayahuasca groups because I benefit from them. And what he meant by benefiting from them was basically I'm a psychic vampire. I draw people's energy. I take it away from them. So these dangers can occur, and that's where a good shaman will stop that happening.
Wait, how was done here? And then,
in this case, he did not do anything. It was most unhelpful. Okay. But I think he's learned greatly from that experience.
But how does the ayahuasquero know that is happening?
Well, that's something where you have to tell them. And in this case, my wife Santa did tell the ayahuasca ayahuasquero, but he did not.
He said, "This person is trying to enter my mind.
Yeah,
They're trying to take from me."
Yeah, yeah. And there's a natural tendency to assume you're making that up as well.
And you're lucid in that moment. You're lucid enough to describe what's happening.
Yes, yes. You can often be lucid during an ayahuasca journey.
You're speaking English to that person. There's
Yeah, you can be. You can be.
And the person who is entering the mind, is he sitting in another area? Is he hovering over
He was
you?
on a bed, not a bed, a mat on the floor, just 2 or 3 people away from us. And we were not the only people who he affected. He affected other people in that room, and there was a gentleman in that room who literally fell down the stairs from the ceremonial space to upstairs trying to get away from him. It really got very, very, very dark.
Did everyone confront him
I think I
afterwards?
described it in a lengthy article on my website. Yes, 2 days later he was asked to leave because he kind of said, I do this. I benefit from